Hello, and welcome to America's Veterans. My name is Len Sorotsky, and I will be your host. Throughout the history of America, our veterans have been there to protect our freedom. That means that no matter where in the world the call came from, our veterans were ready to go. It was not unusual that our service personnel were sent to places they never even heard of. For about the last quarter of a century, our men and women have been sent most often to the Middle East. Seemingly, there was a long list of dictators who all hated America because in our nation it had always been the people that mattered. Usually dictators care nothing for the people. It was only their personal wealth and power that was of concern. And they were not going to give that up. Conquests have been a general rule for dictators, and frequently those conquests went unopposed. That seems to have changed. Not only does the American military protect Americans at home, but we've also been called upon by the weak, almost anywhere. The result of that position is that we will jump in whenever invited or whenever a determination is made that being there is the right thing to do. Recently, Americans have been told that all military personnel in Iraq will come home by the end of this year. Our guest today is one of those thousands of American men and women who have served in Iraq. He was available to participate in Desert Storm in 1990, but his unit was not mobilized until Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. Steve Valli has written a book titled Inside the Fortress, and it tells of his life inside the Green Zone. Let's meet Steve and talk about that life. Steve, welcome to the show. Steve and I have known each other for a long time, I think 200 years or something like that. Gettysburg, yes, we met at Gettysburg. And this is Steve's book, a good, easy read book that those of you who are interested in the life of a soldier, and this is only his life, remember. This is totally different from another guy who might have been not too many miles away from you, right?
Absolutely.
So I'll make references to the book from time to time as we go through the show. But what we always do on America's Veterans is we ask you about who you are. So can you tell us, where were you born, Steve?
I was born in the great city, the hub of the universe, Boston, Massachusetts.
That is
otherwise known, and the hospital it used to be called the Baby Factory, Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts.
Ah, good.
Back at the early years of 1965.
Yeah, and so you probably like clams and stuff like that.
Yeah, the clams are overrated.
Oysters.
I'll take Florida seafood any day of the week.
Okay, yeah. And then this is Steve when you were in front of your television set at home? Is
yeah, I got to be honest. I just got that photo from my mother last night, and I had to be probably 2 or 3 years old. in Billerica, Massachusetts, up in the North Shore of Massachusetts. And I look at it, and I mean, as you know, I mean, it seems like eons ago. And
Sure. Well,
you look at it, I mean, it's well over 40 years ago.
Yeah. And you were playing drums at a very early age.
I don't know if I was playing drums or I was playing with something. I don't know.
Yeah. And then here, it looks like you're getting ready to swim.
Yeah, that was actually with my cousin Alan, who, when I ended up moving to Brockton, Massachusetts, the home of Rocky Marciano and Marvin Hagler, I grew up a street away from my cousin Alan, and we were best friends. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. We vacationed together. When I got back from Baghdad, our families went to Hawaii for 10 days.
Oh,
we've done an
cool.
Alaskan cruise together. And still, I mean, we're complete opposites. He's on the liberal sect, war protester, he's what we call a left wing nut. I'm more right in the middle, but obviously I'm affiliated with the military, so I'm really not a war protester. But I think we've learned over the years, you don't talk about politics, and we get along great.
Yeah, well, you take care of him.
Yeah.
And this is a flock.
That's a handsome guy in the pose.
Yeah, that's a nice pose.
That's deep down in Cape Cod. That's Wellfleet, Massachusetts. My parents were fortunate enough to rent a cottage for 2 weeks of summer, and that was on what we used to call Horsefly Beach. There was sand, water, and a ton of horseflies.
Who's this guy? That
was me. That was early dreams of being an NHL hockey player. That was probably 4th grade, a squirter, a peewee. It was always number 11. And that is actually...
Man, that's...
Yeah, that's... I can
you
tell...
grew up.
I can tell you exactly when that was, because when I made the freshman team at Brockton High School, a bunch of us shaved our heads, so we got whiffles, and that's probably about a month after I shaved my head. So I know that's freshman year, 1979.
So you might have been like 14, 15?
Yeah,
is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you changed the hockey stick.
Yeah, I changed the hockey stick for an M16A1.
Yeah.
That was, that's actually the picture that they take your first couple of weeks in basic training. That was circa 1985 at Fort Benning, Georgia, Army basic training, infantry school, and they pull you in there. You've just learned how to put your uniform on, you know that.
But how did you get into the Army?
That goes on, and when I made it to college at North Adams State College, I didn't do so well the first year, and my parents were financing the college, and I figured the best way for them to get off my back and not hassle me about my grades was to find a way to pay for college myself. So back in the day, we're talking 1985, I had a Massachusetts Army National Guard infantry company about 200 yards from my school apartment. I went down there, I had a couple friends that were already in, and I went down and enlisted in the Army as a guardsman, infantry soldier, 11 Bravo, and that offered me about $100 a month per drill pay, free tuition. I scored well enough on the ASVAB that I qualified for the $5,000 bonus, but also I qualified for a program that would pay back all of my school loans.
Wow.
So not only was I able to cover my tuition, have monthly spending money, I also got a quick repayment of my school loans. I came out of my undergraduate studies debt-free.
I wonder if that would be true today.
It is.
If people who are holding their signs about how much money they owed, maybe they could have gone into the military.
You know, it's
possible.
I look at it, you know, everybody is not made out to serve in the military.
Right.
But I look at countries like Israel, where every citizen is required not to just to perform, to serve for their country, or whether it be as a teacher, a social worker. Maybe if we did that in the United States, and I don't want these people in the military, but there's so many other ways to serve your local community, your government. Maybe some of them do want to serve in the military. But I think that's, that's a big difference between countries.
Yeah, it is. I went in the military first, then I went to school.
Sure.
But I worked all the years that I was going to college, and I, like you, ended up not owing a penny to anybody.
And that's quite, my oldest son right now is a freshman at the University of North Florida, and he's attending Army ROTC as a non-scholarship student. And a lot of the ROTC cadets right now are doing exactly what you did. They've been in the military, they're war veterans.
Yeah.
And they're coming back using the educational benefits and going back to college and becoming an officer, but more importantly, getting a bachelor's degree and becoming a productive member of society after they serve.
Yeah, because there is life after the military.
Yeah, a lot of it.
I know. And then, geez, you got married young.
I didn't get married that young.
Well,
that was...
Well, this is you and Lauren.
Me and Lauren and I, we were engaged in probably 1988, married in 1989, and that was actually our engagement party in '88 up in Massachusetts. Again, I haven't seen these photos in years. And I do look old now compared to what those I look
and
like
you're still as happy as you were then.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. I got a good
woman. But
woman.
you've got two kids. You mentioned your one son.
Alex is at UNF, and my youngest one, Sam, is a little bit out of the ordinary. I'm not sure if he's really mine. He's way above and beyond anything that I could ever have dreamt of being. He's got a goal to attend one of the service academies, and he's a junior at Braden River High School, top 5 in his class, JROTC, National Honor Society. He's building the resume that is needed to attend, to get a nomination from hopefully Congressman Vern Buchanan, who we interned for this summer, but also the ultimate goal of gaining an appointment to one of the academies. A few weeks ago, he's a junior now, we went up to the Naval Academy at Annapolis. My roommate from Baghdad is an instructor there. He was a Marine major, but a Naval Academy graduate, and he's an instructor there, so we spent the weekend up there in Annapolis at his house. Got a great tour. It's a beautiful campus. Stayed for the Navy Air Force football game. Sat 5 rows from the ground. Got a chance to say hi to the Secretary of Defense. Actually got his coin. He was walking by, and he's surrounded by Navy and Air Force military personnel, and you saw one lonely Army lieutenant colonel walk by. And I'm still a sergeant major in the Army Reserve, and I said, "Colonel, Army strong." And he turned around relieved that there was somebody like him, and he came over and we were talking, and when we were finished talking, he shook my hand, and in my hand was the Secretary of Defense's coin. Leon Panetta. I mean, he'd only been SecDef probably about a month. But I went, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Good weekend.
And this is a pretty cool picture, too. Now, you've got 2 sons.
I've got 2.
But I see 3 in here.
That is my cousin Alan, who we talked about in an earlier photo. He married a Chinese PhD, and that is their son, Noah, who they live in Seattle now, but again, they're cousins, the first cousins. With today's social media, they're in constant contact on Facebook and texting, but we're across the country, and we still keep in contact.
But you had hair here and everything.
I still got hair.
Yeah, well,
it's gray. I mean, it's one thing.
Yeah.
My brother went bald at 21. I mean, I'm 46. I mean, there ain't no baldness happening here, Len. You too.
But when you first became involved with the military, if I understand this right, you were with field artillery.
I was with the infantry first.
Yeah. Okay.
The A2104th in North Adams, Massachusetts, the old Yankee division up in the Berkshires. Started out 11 bullet catcher, 11 Bravo, a rifleman, then a squad leader. Then I moved over. I got an opportunity to get promoted to E5, sergeant.
Right.
But I had to go over and learn something new. I became a mortarman. And from there, FDC, a fire direction controller. That was the old days before computers, where you had to plot every point. Even for the Navy, you had to do this. I mean, you had to plot every point and then relay down to the mortars, deflection, which is left and right, and elevation, up and down. You'd give them the coordinates, and they'd hang around and fire it, and your forward observer would call back, well, you
missed it by
you're 30
miles.
You're 30 yards to the left and
Yeah.
200 yards short. So you'd calculate it, you'd figure it out. And I was an English major. I wasn't good at math, so
Yeah.
it was difficult for me. But then I moved on to the field artillery. And when I got to the field artillery, it was great because everything was done on a little Texas Instruments computer, which we called a box. It calculated everything. You type in the data, and 10 seconds later, you'd go, bingo, this is the coordinates, elevation, deflection, and you'd relay it down to the guns, and it made your life unbelievably easier.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question. What percentage of those young people who apply to get in the military today are disallowed? Do you have any idea? I've
talked to the recruiting battalion about this, the Tampa recruiting battalion. I think, I may be wrong, but only 30% of the nation's citizens are actually eligible for the military. And out of that, I believe 1% serve.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, figure it out for yourself. How many people, are we at 260 million in the United States, around there? 1% is probably 2.6 million. That all 5 services, including the Coast Guard. So figure that out. I mean, it used to be an easy way out, but this is the most educated and professional military in the history of the world.
Yeah, and that's the point that I wanted to make, is that we, so many people, young people, miss their chances because they don't give it their best when they have the chance in school.
Yeah.
They don't, and they think, well, how important is this stupid math or whatever? And then all of a sudden they want to get into the Marines, and I want to be one or something, and then you find out, no, you don't qualify because you don't know how to read.
And 10 years ago, it was an easy out. I mean, the military was always there. They probably would have taken a lot of these candidates.
Yeah.
But now, with the economy in the dumps, a lot of people thought, well, heck, I can get a job. I'll just sign up. They're not going to
get in.
They're not going to. They're taking the best of the best.
No, I think if my statistics are anywhere near accurate, during World War I, the military, I'll say Army, got very upset because approximately 25% of the people who came into the Army shouldn't have been there because they didn't even know how to read.
But it was also a draft.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But after the war, in 1919, the American Legion, which was like the first unit, social unit to be formed after World War I, they got together with the National Education Association, which was the Teachers Association. In those days, it was not a union.
Yeah.
And they got together and talked about national testing, call it SAT, and so on. And it was the military that pushed that, and it was the military that also pushed American Education Week, which is the week after Veterans Week.
Yeah.
And so education is it's so important today.
So is that where the ASVAB evolved from, right there? The entrance exam for the military?
I don't know that for sure.
Right.
No, I don't know. Right. But you and I were both able to get in.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You know.
I was a freshman in college. I mean, I got into college. I knew I could score pretty well in the ASVAB. But that, I may have went out the night before. I was still in a fraternity at college. I mean, I wasn't a choir boy by any stretch of the imagination.
In the time, let me ask this first. Exactly how long were you in Iraq from beginning to end? Was it
a little over 12 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 12 months that you were there, man, there was a lot that happened in Iraq.
That was just
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I used to call it a very exciting time.
Yeah, well, and I think it was.
I mean, that was the start of the uprising with Muqtada Sadr. Al-Qaeda was was building up.
We're going to get back to that.
Yeah, transfer of sovereignty. I mean, there was a lot.
Yeah. This is the only time I'm going to make a quote out of your book, but I just want to mention this, and this is right out of Steve's book. The military's mission was to kill the bad guys and implement a Western-style democracy in an area of the world that had none, while not harming any innocents. And it's like, wait a minute, you're going to go in there, and the guys who are already there, they want to cut your throat badly. I mean, that's their wish. They want to get you and kill you. But you're saying that your mission, or our mission, was to go in there, kill the bad guys, don't hurt the innocents, and create a new sort of nation.
That's what it evolved to. I mean, I think everyone remembers the original mission was to depose Saddam Hussein, and take control of his WMDs.
Yep.
Well, we did one of those, but unfortunately the second one never seemed to materialize.
Couldn't find him, searched the whole desert, right?
So there's no better organization, more adept at change than the military, so we shifted gears and we had a new mission.
And you know what? You just mentioned Saddam Hussein was deposed. That happened after you got there. Am I right?
It happened. I was actually at Fort Stewart, and I write about this. I was in the base exchange. It was a Sunday morning, and we were about 2 weeks from leaving from Fort Stewart, Georgia, to fly into the Middle East. And we were in the exchange just getting something to eat, and we were watching TV, and we looked up and we saw Ambassador Paul Bremer announce to the world that American forces caught and captured Saddam Hussein. And I think we all remember that picture of him with the long hair and in front of a white wall. And that was, I remember saying to my commander, turning around and go, you know, maybe this isn't going to be so bad.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
Yeah. But as far as the mission was concerned, you kind of felt that way too, right?
I mean, I thought once Saddam Hussein was captured, any type of insurgents would fall like dominoes, and they'd succumb to the U.S. rebuilding their country. I don't think anyone would have imagined that Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Zarqawi, and the rest of the scumbags, Sadr, and I don't think we ever thought that they'd have the kind of impact that they ultimately had, and we'd see as many casualties as we ended up seeing.
Yeah. But the casualties, I think one of the things, it seems to me that one of the differences between the different kinds of confrontations that we're having all over the Middle East, it's not like Gettysburg.
No.
Not like
Vietnam.
Yeah, well, that's altogether different.
Yeah.
But I mean, you didn't say, let's line up, boys. Here come the enemy.
And you go back, you watch the old movies of the Revolution.
Yeah.
When the Brits and the Americans used to stand up, and
that's right.
One line would fire, they'd nail and reload.
Yeah.
This is guerrilla warfare, terrorism at its best. I mean, you know, they knew from the get-go they couldn't beat the coalition, the U.S. military, the British military. You can't beat them face to face.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. We're too well trained. Our equipment is better. Our personnel are better. The only way they're going to get us is picking us off one and two with a car bomb, with an IED, with a booby trap, something like that. And that's, you know, throughout the history of war, I mean, that's how you fight big militaries, one by one.
Yeah.
But they ultimately lose, too.
Yeah. But when you know, this is happening in such a short period of time that Saddam Hussein comes down and you get over.
I get over in January 2004.
And you actually get to spend your time over there in the Green Zone.
Yeah, and mainly in the Green Zone, a lot of time at Camp Victory, which is right next to Baghdad International Airport, which we used to call BIOP. But there was a 10-mile ride on Airport Road, which the military called Route Irish. And for at least my year there, it was the most dangerous road in the world. And volunteering for convoys, and it was, you didn't know if you were going to come back. I mean, you get the door breakers, the grunts that were breaking down doors looking for bad guys.
Yeah.
That was a whole different life. But every time you hopped in a Humvee and went out on Airport Road, it was a dicey situation.
Well, what was the theory? No, the theory. Green zone meant safe place, didn't it? Or something like that?
That's a complete misnomer that I tried to correct in the book. And the news media always says the heavily fortified green zone.
Yeah.
The green zone is just as fortified as every other American base in Iraq. Camp Victory, Camp Taji, Camp Spiker, any forward operation base, it has walls around it and is guarded by military men and women. What made the green zone different is that there's 3 weapon statuses in the green zone. You get the green, level green, is when you have your weapon on you, which you have at all times, and you have your magazines of ammunition in your cargo pocket. So you always have your weapon and ammunition in case anything happens, you can take it out. Amber is when you have your weapon and a magazine inserted in your weapon, but not locked and loaded. You can walk around. When we knew there was an attempt, we'd get intel from the J2 folks and say, be ready, the Al-Qaeda is trying to sneak in a vehicle and they're looking to kidnap female soldiers. So my office, we'd make an announcement in the morning, we're now in amber. So you'd have your weapon and you'd slap a magazine in there. The last weapon status is red. That's the wild, wild west, the red zone, where you've got your magazine inside your weapon, you're cocked and locked, ready to go, your weapon on safe. So if something happens, you got 30 rounds. I mean, everybody in the office, we all carried M16A1s. When I went on convoys, I used to strap another 9mm on my hip, on my leg, just in case, if it ever got that close. But the more bullets you have, at least in my mind, the safer you'd be.
Yeah.
But that was where the name the green zone came. It had nothing to do with safety. I mean, I will tell you, and it's fact, you can look it up on Wikipedia or whatever. There was about a 3 or 4 month period in 2004 where the green zone took the most incoming rockets, mortars, bullets out of any other base in Iraq. And that includes Fallujah, Najaf, Mosul, the Sunni Triangle up in Kirkuk, up around there. So when they say heavily fortified green zone, I laugh at that, and I still do. I mean, it's a complete misnomer.
So the fact was that anyone inside the green zone was at risk from mortars 24 hours a day.
I can tell you, driving out of my office one day, I'm in the back seat. I'm the first sergeant, so I have a driver. I'm sitting in the back of a Humvee, and no lie, we hear mortars coming in. They walked mortars in from 100 feet beyond the T-walls till about 150 meters in front of our car. So, you can wake up to that. At night, you could hear it, and I was in the field artillery and mortars. You can hear the thump, and it'd be from downtown. And you'd count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. And after the round landed around the presidential palace, you could hear it land. Most of them fell outside the green zone because they were horrible shots. You realize that they had to get a round off and then move before the U.S. triangulated where that round came from and wrapped some hell on them. So they shot it and they drive away. But the round would impact, sometimes very close, and then after it impact, Big Brother would come on with the air siren, take cover, put on your Kevlar, and it's like, you're laying in bed in an aluminum trailer, all right? And God forsake, and it used to happen for weeks at a time. I had another lawyer, another roommate who was an Army captain, a JAG officer, and he turned to me, "You're putting on your gear," and I said, "Earl, you know what? If these guys are lucky enough to sink around in my trailer, this helmet and this flak vest isn't going to matter. I mean, if they're lucky enough to get it in, I'm gone anyhow. We're both gone. So, you know, you want to put your gear on. I'm gonna go outside and just relax and wait for the shenanigans to end. But you know, it happens so often. I mean, and that was one of the biggest problems. It happens so often that we got complacent. You know, I mean, there's gunfire coming in.
I think that's natural.
Yeah, I mean.
But you know, I have to ask this question: rounds from mortars or rockets or whatever, don't they cost money?
Oh, they believe me. The insurgency had money coming in from Iran. They still do.
America.
Yeah. Well, maybe. You maybe know about more than that, but realize who was the head of Al-Qaeda back then.
Yeah.
Osama bin Laden was from a family of multimillionaires. I mean, he was a family cast-off, but he was pretty well financed at that point. And there's a lot of radical Islamists out there who hate America, as you said in the open.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest ways to support them is financially. I mean, they were taking old weapons from the Iraqis and making IEDs. I mean, have you seen a 100-pound 1.908 field artillery round? It's 100 pounds. I mean, it's a lot of high explosive. Enough to hurt you. It's a 20-yard circumference kill zone.
Whoa!
You drive a vehicle over that, and you know it's going to do some damage. And unfortunately, that's where most of our American casualties came.
I always wondered about the weapons that I mean. I think we're supposed to believe these are, you know, people who live out in the desert, and what are they doing with these weapons? I mean, and it's not just once in a while.
No,
it's like every guy has got one.
Well, realize when we came in, and this is one of the decisions that I wrote about in my book, I think you can trace most of the insurgency back to the decision by Ambassador Paul Bremer to fire every person, whether they were in the government or the military, that was affiliated with the Ba'ath Party, and it was called the de-Baathification process. So what in turn that did was send home every Army or military soldier with their weapon, forget about their retirement, paycheck. He made a lot of people angry, and they all went home with their weapons and bombs, and they may have hidden them. So for the next 5 years, that's what we faced. I mean, there were unlimited amounts of mortars, field artillery rounds, cell phones to create timers, and there were a lot of people that didn't exactly look at the United States in a positive way.
But when one of those kinds of weapons is fired, for example, and with the lack of precision accuracy, you might kill an American, but wasn't it just as likely that you'd kill
They've killed
an Iraqi?
I forget the last count I saw, well over 200,000 Iraqis. Don't think for a minute that the United States killed all those. I mean, most of them were killed by the insurgency. When I told you that a lot of these rockets flew over the green zone, where do you think they ended up?
Right,
they ended up in
village.
some poor Iraqi house where they're sleeping in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden they have a rocket come through their roof or through their side window.
What I want you to do is give us an idea of what the green zone was. I mean, like how many buildings were in there? Where did you...
Do you remember when the war started, you saw the shock and awe, all those buildings that were on fire? That was basically downtown Baghdad, central Baghdad. It was, I think it was a 7 by 5 mile slice of downtown Baghdad, bordered by 15-foot high T-walls, big Jersey barriers, a lot of cement. If you're a union worker or in the mafia and was responsible for concrete, that was your contracting dream. But it's what it was. I mean, it turned into basically the head of the U.S. operations, strategically, not tactically. The head of the U.S. operations were at Camp Victory, but you had the four-star general, General George Casey, the head of multinational forces Iraq. His office was at the Presidential Republican Palace in Baghdad, right on the river. That's where I lived. You had all the Iraqi government offices. You had, where I first lived there, we had commandeered a former Republican Guard general's estate. It was it was a walled-in estate, beautiful. It was where the elite of the Baghdad Ba'ath Party lived. You can imagine, I mean, they had a creek going through the whole neighborhood, and in fact, soldiers, after Baghdad fell, one of the Ba'ath Party officials tried to hide like $5 or $6 million in American dollars in one of the creek beds, and the American military found it. I mean, they had more money over there. Yeah, so this is where the elite of Saddam Hussein's Baathists lived. I mean, you know, it was good to be the king over there.
I apologize for this. I should have had a map. I should have brought a map to see where's the green zone, where's Baghdad. They're not identical, are they?
Well, no, it is. It borders. It's right in downtown Baghdad.
It is right in downtown.
It's right in downtown Baghdad. I mean, you get the Tigris River that separates part of it. I mean, I can tell you, I was sitting in my home one night, and right over the river, probably what we call a click, a half mile away, maybe a third of a mile away, over the river. We're watching TV one night. We had bootleg cable TV that we had managed to get, and the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Baghdad was right across the river. You could see it. I mean, you could see the windows of the hotel. It was a tower-type hotel, and we lived in a fortified general's mansion, estate, with bars in the window. But all of a sudden, there was an explosion, and they had exploded a bomb or shot some type of rocket at the hotel. And this is how close we were to downtown. It literally, the concussion a third of a mile away, knocked me off the couch. And we thought we were getting attacked. We're sitting there watching television. I mean, you have your weapon right next to you, but we had 4 or 5 people there. My commander, we literally were blown off the couch, and we went into full protective mode. I mean, we immediately went up to the roof of our house and set up our grid zones, and then we looked over, and the Sheraton, you know, there's nothing but smoke, and it was a major attack. We were on the radio, and we found out what happened. I mean, it was all civilian in there. It was where the American media was based.
You were in public relations, and would you explain the difference between what you thought public relations should be and what the NBC or ABC or what's her name, Amanpour?
Oh, Christiana, yeah.
Yeah, Christiana. What's different?
The military's goal in public affairs, at least the Army, is maximum disclosure, minimum delay. You know, people say that, you know, the best case was we'd be monitoring CNN in the where I worked at the Combined Press Information Center, which we called the CPIC, military and acronyms. Who would have thought? But we'd be watching an American Humvee, the vehicle, burning in Sadr City, and we all know what it is. I mean, you're sitting there watching it, you know what it is. And you'd be sitting there, and the media would start calling. Can you confirm this and that? You know, how many people are in it? Who did it belong to? And they always thought that we delayed the news. We never delayed the news. We operate under the premise, sure, it's great to be first with the news, but it's better to be accurate with the right information, especially when you know that one of your brothers or sisters may have been injured or even killed in that vehicle. So we operated under the premise that if it took an extra half hour or hour to confirm that we had the most accurate information, we'd rather do that than say, yeah, this vehicle was from so-and-so, the 1st Cavalry Division, 1st Battalion A Company. You know, we operated on being as truthful as possible without taking a side either way. I mean, you can argue from 5 ways to midnight that the media is biased. I mean, I used to watch some horrendous coverage on the mainstream media during my time over there, and you still see it today. I mean, they're not, they all have their opinions. You think that most of these news outlets lean to the left. I can tell you from dealing firsthand with a lot of these media representatives, they were some of the best people I knew over there. Did they have their political beliefs? Yeah. Did they believe what a lot of people believe, that America was lied to go into war? Probably. But a lot of them were out there just to report the news, and they were a lot of the media were in the field a heck of a lot more than I was. We used to embed them. I mean, the Battle of Fallujah in November 2004, the largest door-to-door battle since Vietnam. We embedded close to 95 journalists that were with the units. They weren't in the back, they were on the front lines with the units. So a lot of these media reps were hardcore war correspondents. Whatever they reported, I mean, you really couldn't control it. We provided an opportunity for them to see America's best doing what they do best. And I don't think any of them were critical of the American military, maybe the political decisions, but it seemed that everyone had their opinion over there.
I know from reading the book that you did meet a large number, probably, of like Peter Jennings.
Peter Jennings, before he died. Richard Engel from NBC News, who is still their chief Middle Eastern correspondent.
Geraldo Rivera.
Geraldo Rivera. I mean, I met him several times. Good stories about him in the book, but just a couple. I mean, Christiana Amanpour. I had her curse at me, but one of the greatest journalists and one of the greatest human beings I met over there was a Pulitzer Prize winner for the New York Times, John Fisher Burns. Probably the most prolific journalist of the last 15 or 20 years. Just a phenomenal individual who talked to people eyeball to eyeball, didn't talk to anybody, looking down, or didn't call you any names. He was actually interested in you, the person.
Huh. But isn't there a difference in that some of the things that the American soldiers are doing in Iraq are underplayed, like with schools?
It was, listen, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
I've had several reporters tell me that. I mean, reporters, the media need conflict to sell advertising, and without advertising, there is no media. There's no. Do you think you can pay Diane Sawyer from ABC $10 million a year without selling at least $50 million worth of advertising? I mean, it's capitalism at its best.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't have conflict, you can't sell advertising. If you go out and do powder puff stories on the American military opening up their 250th medical clinic for the Iraqi people, or propping up a food supply warehouse in downtown Fallujah in the middle of the insurgency. If you remember, Ramadi and Fallujah were two of the worst places on earth. But here we are providing $200,000 loans to local businessmen to prop up local business. They don't care about that. There's no controversy in that.
Well, I think it's if it bleeds, it leads. Is that right?
That's
and
the
yet,
saying.
what I think, what confuses me with that is that I'd say fairly often, our news media say, we can't show you this. It is so gruesome, you know, or something like that. And so if I think one time you almost shot a young boy.
I did.
Tell that story, because I think that's a good story.
It was, we went in a convoy. Again, one of those convoys down Route Irish, where as soon as we get out of the green zone into the red zone, we immediately turned around and we knew that something happened. And we're in a convoy of probably 20 vehicles, and you have crew-served weapons, the automatic weapons, and 4 or 5 of them, and a bunch of military Humvees, a couple civilian 18-wheelers. And we went back to the green zone, to the staging area, and I was ready to call it a day. I said, hey, there was a VBIED, a car bomb on Route Irish.
Okay.
That exploded probably 5 minutes before we were at that point. We circled back, and usually when that happens, the roads close down for a couple hours when they investigate it. And I'm ready to call it a day, go back to the office. Then the convoy commander, comes back, and I'm the senior enlisted there. I'm a first sergeant, and he goes, hey, Top, we got another route that's been cleared out, and we're going to go through downtown Baghdad. I said, you sure? He said, yeah, I mean, we're in soft vehicles. There was no up armor vehicles. I'm in a Humvee with no doors on it and a canvas roof. So we end up going through downtown Baghdad and over the 4th of July bridge right out of the green zone and into downtown Baghdad, which is fine. I mean, it's a big city. Think New York without the luxury. It's a mess. I mean, the whole area there is just filthy. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe it had something to do with the war, but so we're caught in traffic in downtown Baghdad and going through about a foot deep of raw sewage in the middle of the street, and the smell is rancid. It's about 90 degrees, 85, 90 degrees. You're full battle rattle, so you have your uniform on, your helmet, your vest. You've got both cargo pockets filled with 30-round magazines. You've got probably 100, 120 pounds of extra weight. And you're stuck in the back seat of your Humvee covering your sector, and you can't drink water while you're doing it, so your body's starting to cramp up. So after about a half hour of being in traffic, just a little downtown area, this little boy, probably at 10, 11, 12, is about 50, 60 meters away. And he's sitting there looking at me, and he's a normal Iraqi kid, good-looking kid, peaceful kid. And he sees me, I'm covering my quadrant, and he looks right at me and goes, and I was simply amazed that these kids knew that kind of hatred at such an early age. And that's when I knew that, if I had a cramp and put one round, he wasn't that far away. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have, but that's not what we were doing there. But if I ever cramped up, it would have been an international incident. But what also came to my mind is that it really sunk in of what our enemy was there. If they can teach this kid that kind of hatred at such a young age, what happens when these young men turn into teenagers and join the insurgency, go to some desert camp and learn how to build a IED, or learn how to be a sniper, or learn how to cut somebody's throat or kidnap somebody? That really brought to the front of what our enemy was, and it wasn't a pretty conclusion.
No. So, but wasn't there a little more to that? Did you suspect that he might take action?
Well, I mean, it was getting antsy. I mean, it was either I was waiting for him to pull out a cell phone, I was waiting for him to pull out a weapon, and trust me, when it comes to that, whether it's him or me, I've got the loaded weapon. It's I can deal with it afterwards. If he pulled out a gun, it made no difference to me. It's kill or be killed. So my goal was to get out of there alive.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're, you know, the Army, no matter what military occupational specialty you are, you're a soldier first. And I started out an infantryman. I mean, you've been in those situations in the military. Everyone who's served in Iraq or Afghanistan, whether you're a door breaker as an infantryman or an office clerk back in a forward operating base, you're on the front lines. And it's if it comes down to it, kill or be killed, you know how to pull that trigger.
And I think that one of the things that Americans don't understand is that children can kill.
Oh, yeah.
And we've never, as far as I know, we've never taught our children to kill. No. You know, and I mean teach them, instruct them how to kill, and the way those kids learn about what Americans are. You know, I mean.
Well, they're taught at a very young age, and this what really amazed me. And you know, when I thought of religious fanatics in the United States, and don't take this, I'm not speaking bad of anyone, but I thought of the Jerry Falwells and the Pat Robertson, who seem to have a strong following.
Yeah.
And if they preach something on their TV shows, their followers may go out and do it. But it's nothing incendiary like starting a rebellion. But take this to the umpteenth extreme in the Middle East, where their local cleric may preach at the Friday prayer service that you need to go out and kill an American soldier, or you know, kidnap and bring to the local mosque and you know, somebody who's been collaborating with the coalition. How do you teach that kind of hatred at such a young age? And it's just a completely different culture. I mean, I could have never imagined it was that bad.
Yeah, I think we could swing into a discussion of religion real easy, and so we'll try to avoid that. But this is not the first time in history that children were instructed to be killers, and Americans don't get that. They just don't get that at all. It's a different culture. And what gets into the news is that American soldier kills child, you know, and it's like, wow, you don't get it, do you? That
we are held to a higher standard, as we should be.
Yeah,
as we should be. But realize, I've been in the room, and I've been right in the middle of discussions about when we're going to attack something, when we're going to lay a bomb on an enemy post, and you wouldn't believe the different levels of approval that you need. And one of the decision makers is collateral damage. Our goal isn't to wipe out a neighborhood, it's to wipe out one house in a neighborhood. And you could walk through downtown Baghdad, and this is what amazed me sometimes, where you could have a governmental building that had 2 or 3 JDAM munitions dropped from an Air Force fighter that were bullseye, dead on. That building would be completely demolished, but yet 50 feet away, you have a building, and the only damage you could see were broken windows. That's how good we are. And that's the kind of planning in the approval process that we go under. We mitigate collateral damage, not only people, but building and infrastructure too. So you know, that's the kind of approval, and that's the kind of military we are today.
Steve, I'm pretty sure we could go on for about 2 or 3 hours. I really mean that. You're a very good talker, and you've got good information to share. I think Abu Ghraib, for example, that you
was a black guy.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. But we're not going to be able to talk forever. But I do want to ask you if there is one thing that I didn't ask you that you wanted me to, or that you wanted to make a last comment on.
I just, you know, I'm proud to wear the uniform. I've been in for 25 years. I've made it to the highest level I'm going to make it, a sergeant major. And I'm honored to represent America's best. I mean, there's not too many people that can say that. I'm a war veteran, a proud war veteran. All-American VFW commander, but veterans are, one of my VFW mates said it best, and he goes, what job can you go to where the guy next to you is willing to die for you?
Yeah, that's
You know,
right.
and that's the kind of people
That's exactly right.
I mean, especially, we've had our great generation. We've got a new greatest generation from the world of Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom, and there's some wonderful men and women, youngsters, that are doing unbelievably good deeds in an area of the world that really doesn't appreciate them right now. And 10 years, 20 years down the line,
If they can hang on.
yeah, we can only hope that what we started finishes with success.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can't tell all the stories that are in Steve's book, so if you want to know more, please get this book. That brings today's program to a close. We offer a very special thank you to our guest, Steve Valli. We thank also the great staff of METV for making this program possible. And most of all, we thank you, our audience, for taking some of your precious minutes to watch our program. So many young Americans have played a role in our adventures in the Middle East over the past quarter century. It would be marvelous to have thousands of them come home in time for Christmas. Until they do, please say a prayer for their safety. And when they do, please welcome them in as many ways as are possible. Remember that freedom is never free. The cost is always very high, and often the cost of our freedom is paid for with American lives. God bless every person in uniform today. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.